come back for the second. India have won the test match. India have won the series. They're going to get back for two. India home. Lords goes wild.
Hello and welcome to a new episode of the 81 All Out podcast. This is Siddhartha Vaidyanathan at Sidvi on Twitter. And today I'm joined by the regular crew, Ashoka, Mahesh and Kartikeya. I'll link their Twitter handles. I'll link Kartikeya's Substack. Most of you who are regular listeners are familiar with the crew. This is basically, before we start, usual reminder, Cricket Beyond the Bazaar by Mike Coward, recently republished by 81 All Out. It was published first in 1990. It went out of print. And then now we've brought it back through our publishing imprint. This is the second book we're coming out with after Mike Marquez's book War Minus the Shooting about the 1996 World Cup. Both books are available on Amazon and it's available on Flipkart in India too. I'll put all the links there. Please pick it up. They're both classic works of cricket literature and you'll gain a lot by reading them. Anyway, so in this particular episode, again, we're not talking about any particular match or series as we sometimes do. We end up reviewing and previewing series, but this time it's much more of a featurey topic, given that we are in the T20 season or T20 era, we may say, given the number of T20s people are playing these days. There's the Asia Cup that's going on. There's the World Cup, the T20 World Cup that is going to be played. So a lot of T20. And so I thought it'll be interesting to talk about this idea that I first read when in a piece by Kartikeya quite a while back. And this is something that Kartikeya has been talking about for over a decade now, about how the approach of batters in T20 is the traditional approach doesn't necessarily work for batters in T20, and how he divides players into batters and hitters, in a sense, to figure out who is a good batter and who is a good hitter and who is suited to the format and who ends up optimally playing well in T20. So Kartikeya, maybe I can get you started to give us a brief gist of that, and then we can take it from there about the various aspects of this.
Okay. Well, so this is entirely a plot to put me on the spot, huh?
No, it is a way to basically tell you to explain your theory and then completely demolish it and disagree with it. Okay.
Yes.
That I can deal with. That's normal. No, firstly, there aren't batters and hitters. There's batting and hitting. And different people try to do it and different people don't try to do it. And basically batting, as it is understood traditionally by everybody, is the art of accumulating runs. Okay? There is a basic assumption when we speak of batting that the batter has a abiding interest in not getting out. So the kinds of shots the batter plays, what is considered a good shot, what is considered a bad shot, what is considered a good risk, what is considered a bad risk, what is considered a good ball, what is considered a bad ball. All of this is determined, or all of this is shaped by this basic premise that the batter does not want to get out and the batter wants to keep accumulating runs. And the bigger the score, the better the batting. So the conventional wisdom goes, right? Or the longer the innings, the better the batter has played, or the longer the batter has survived, and the better it is for the batter's team. And that's batting. But in T20, because T20 is a game of efficiency, like all limited overs games. Like even ODI cricket is a game of efficiency, but it's 50 overs and T20 is only 20 overs. So it's even more sort of acutely a game of efficiency. The imperative in T20 is different. The imperative in T20 is not for the batter to survive as long as he can, but to exploit each delivery as much as he can, right? So, whereas in Test cricket, which you might think of as a game of control, the idea is to survive as long as you can, right? And accumulate runs in the process. So it's basically hitting is the art of exploiting each delivery as much as you can to extract as many runs as you can, and not really caring about getting dismissed. And there are sort of other aspects of this distinction which one can draw, but this is the basic distinction. Now, ODI cricket is an interesting in-between format, where there are parts of ODI games, and there used to be, especially with the new ball, and even today with 2 new balls in some parts of the world, where there are parts of the ODI game where batting is useful, and there are other parts of the ODI game where hitting is useful. So in ODI cricket, you see a little bit of both coming into play and being useful. There are 300 balls for 10 wickets. Whereas in T20 cricket, with only 120 balls for 10 wickets, there isn't really any scope for batting. You basically need hitting. So this is something that has been emerging in T20 cricket over the last decade. And, in the leagues, I think they are much further ahead of the international sides, because their imperatives in the leagues are different. I mean, the international sides are still dominated by, the predisposition to pick the big stars. Like, Australia will still pick Steve Smith in their T20 side until recently. And India will still pick Kohli, and Australia and New Zealand will still pick Williamson. Whereas
and
in
Pakistan
the
have to pick Babar Azam.
And in the leagues, firstly, they don't all have that luxury. They don't have that. There aren't that many really elite batters in the world. So, but they also have this. That's also why they are far more efficient and far more progressive, I think, than the international sides. And now I think the international sides are picking up. I think England have been at the forefront. I think West Indies were the pioneers in this, much as they were pioneers in one-day cricket. But though I think that is overplayed a little bit. I think Viv Richards sort of made it look like the West Indies were pioneers in sort of the...
No, they were. Clive Lloyd was quite a pioneer. Yeah.
Yeah, and some of that also came from their experience of playing a lot of 40 and 60 over cricket in England. All their players.
Yeah.
So,
that's a great setup. And firstly, we must mention that back in the early days of T20, there was this whole way to compare it to Test cricket and one-day cricket, and to try and talk about it in the vocabulary of tests. And we have famous cases of the Royal Challengers Bangalore picking pretty much a test team for their first season of the IPL with Wasim Jafar, Chandapal, Dravid, and Callis. I mean, now we look back at it as a joke. I mean, even then it was a bit of a joke. But the fact is that, and Karthikeya has been writing about it since ever, is that the intrinsic logic of T20 is that you have a lot of resources with very limited time and overs. So it's but obvious that your approach has to be different, and the game itself is different. It's structured differently than a one-day game or a test contest. So that I think is very okay. That is widely accepted now, and people are not talking about T20 the way they used to, say, in 2010 or 11 or something. They're talking about it pretty much like a different sport. Sorry?
Or even in 2019 or 20 or anything. I mean, India were not talking about T20 in this way until recently.
Yeah, basically India started playing T20 this year. That's when this is the year they started playing the format.
Yeah. I mean, in the international T20 is not really that serious. No, I mean, until recently, it's still been sort of the thing that teams do on test tours on the side after the test matches are over. And it's like the big players go away, and then the marginal players come in.
Specialists.
It's only recently. Actually, one of the interesting developments is that only recently that the T20 international sides are beginning to pick T20 sides and sending them on tour while the test team is also on tour. So that's begun to happen. So the T20 international T20 is acquiring its own identity. Otherwise, it was in the early World Cups. It was just considered like a miniature ODI World Cup in a sense. And not a lot of teams didn't really compete in T20 as T20.
Yeah, I mean, this is the chance to bring up the fact that until 2006, India didn't even think that, the format was worthy of having anything to do with. I mean, they went to the extent of, saying, even going to the extent of saying that they won't take part in the first edition of the World Cup, which they eventually ended up winning. But there was a time when they said they won't even take part in it because they didn't consider the format even worthy of being recognized. So, yeah, important thing to remember when we talk about the history of the format. Yes, so the other two guests have been silent so far, but please come in with your thoughts. I mean, this is all broad thoughts. I mean, we can get into the specifics later. But yeah,
I kind of broadly agree with Karthikeya, which is shocking, but yeah, his premise is all much, fine. When the 2007 World Cup happened, and Misbah single-handedly led the T20 revolution in India. Without him, I don't think T20 would have been, as popular as it is.
To be fair, the IPL was announced before that final, so I think it would have become big anyway. But yeah, there is. It became much more popular very soon thanks to Misbah.
Misbah. I think he's the father of Indian T20s. You can just. If you want a nice quote.
Don't forget Srishant, man. He's in the first opening credits of our 81 All Out music. What is this?
Yeah, but 6 of 4 balls and he's just lapping it to Srishant. So anyway, but even in that World Cup, you can see that they were not very serious actually. Because the way to resolve ties was bowl outs, if you remember. It had, and India won a T20 match against Pakistan 3-0 or something. So the scorecards and everything was so bizarre at that point in time. Nobody was much sure. But the idea was right. The point was like hit and giggle, but hitting became much more serious down the line. Like there was a good value of hitters, though people were not very ready to recognize that T20 in itself was like a batsman heavy game. The batting team had too many resources for 120 balls. So in order to see that every batter has an average of 12 balls to, come and do his job and get out. So that philosophy, I think West Indies started recognizing it, though in a roundabout way, because they didn't care about singles or, twos or threes. They were much interested in how much boundaries could you score in those 120. So yeah, right now teams are being serious about it. Even in the IPL, you could see, even in the auctions, you could see how all-rounders and most importantly, all-rounders who could hit quite far were valued more than traditional batsmen. In the auctions, the dynamics of who the teams picked changed. So that was an indication that teams are learning, more people are learning how T20 should function, what is the optimal way of constructing a team. So it's no longer just a minority saying that, batting teams previously were a little bit conservative. And to the point where I was just looking at strike rates, Yuvraj and Raina, we think of them as like limited over specialists, and like they had a lot of memorable T20 moments, but their strike rates is like 128 and 130 odds respectively, which today would be is what KL Rahul does, and we are very displeased with KL Rahul for doing it for Kings 11 Punjab at least. So yeah, T20 paradigm and thinking has shifted a lot. So to that extent, I do agree with KD. But KD has some crazy theories about utilization of resources and how a batsman is not useful after a certain number of balls. All those nonsense I do not agree with, but let him come to that. Let's finish the opening first.
Wait, about the Raina and Yuvraj point, how much better were they to the people who were playing the format at that time? If they were better, then they were still, you can consider them good.
Gale was playing still. Gale was playing.
Raina played a long time, so he was playing alongside some T20 legends.
Gale.
Yeah, his strike rate is like 137 over like 336 matches. Yuvraj is out of 231 matches, his strike rate is 128. So, so yeah, those are not stellar ones, but I guess that's how the game evolved. Now, if you have a 128 and 130 strike rate, people will think twice before putting in a middle order, unless you are like a good bowler and you can fill in that number 8 slot or something. You will not be a number 5, number 6 batsman with that kind of a strike rate.
Okay, for instance, what is a strike rate like someone like Tewatia have, Rahul Tewatia?
Yeah, he has 143.
Oh, that's good. Yeah, so that's better than them, and he bowls. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, that's what I mean. With a 128 strike rate, you being in the top 5 or top 6 is an idea. Maybe if there are no resources or whatnot, maybe you'll be there. Or if they have a specific plan, as an outdated plan, as one anchor who's batting through the innings at the top of the order like Babar and everybody else scoring around that person, maybe then there is a value to having that kind of a player there. But I think, yeah, over the years, 140 seems to be the default strike rate everybody is aiming for, and 140, 150.
Yeah, I've always found it amusing that the T20 kind of took shape in the way that it did, right? Like if you remember first of all, I'm just curious on what made cricket, or whoever that marketing research guy in ECB who did the survey and came out with this format, arrive at, because every other trial at a new format, an inventive, adventurous format in cricket, did not involve allocating the same resource for a shorter contest as a 50-over game, right? So, like if you think of Hong Kong Sixers, or there was the Super 8s, and there was Max Cricket that Martin Crowe invented, or even double wicket contests, for instance, you saw people scoring at a disproportionately faster pace than they were doing in one-day cricket in all these formats. And in fact, you know, the kind of team that India sent for Hong Kong Sixers was Atul Vasan, Rohan Gavaskar, Robin Singh. You know, like it was just Atul Bedard. It was nothing to do with the mainstream Indian team at all, right? So to me, it is quite unique for T20 that there is the first time where cricket tried to tweak a contest into shorter than a full-length one-day match and still gave 10 wickets, which itself was unique. And two, I also think that cricketers, like, you know, when you were mentioning RCB, for instance, or even traditional batsmen, I would like to believe, and Katie started the podcast by distinguishing between, you know, batsmen versus hitters versus batting versus hitting. And that's an important distinction. I would like to believe that, you know, for a good one-day batsman, or for a good test and one-day batsman, T20 should have been a liberating format where they didn't have to care about getting out and they would have just gone hammer and tongs. So I'm just a little bit puzzled that it didn't start out in this way, even in the mid 2000s when it started, right? Like logically, every good one-day batsman should have tried to score at 160, 170. I think Sehwag probably did. Not at that strike rate, but higher than most others. I'm saying everybody should have done that. I'm just surprised that they didn't do it. Perhaps is it because there was just too much money at stake? You know, like all of a sudden, IPL or T20 was the only format which was a cute, adventurous sort of attempt at, you know, a new format, which also took itself seriously, right? Like Hong Kong Sixers didn't take itself seriously. Super 8 didn't take itself seriously. Max didn't take itself seriously.
I took Hong Kong Sixers very seriously. So
no, I mean, even I did, right? But I'm just saying, cricket did not take itself seriously.
Yeah,
like, you know,
you want a legend in Hong Kong Sixers or anything?
No, I have seen double wicket tournaments where they've scored the same 4 sixes that he scored of Hemmings, right? Like there was a similar sort of setup, and he did almost a replication of that. Nobody talks about it because it was just fun and giggle, right? Nobody took it seriously. But
and it was not at Lords also.
Yeah, it was not at Lords, but the Lord was still Lord, which is KD, the other KD. So T20 had this problem of first taking itself seriously, throwing so much money at it. Therefore, cricketers took themselves seriously. Perhaps that probably inhibited them from exploring their full hitting range. That's one point I wanted to make. The other one also suited the administrators a lot that batsmen tended to do a little bit of batting. Because in the initial stage, see now T20 has evolved a lot, right? But in the initial stage, a lot of the audience that it was getting was not because of the fact that it is going to provide you a compressed sort of period of hitting or something, right? It was just all superstars in one place. And if you're there to watch a superstar, like I remember there was this opening partnership between Sachin and Jayasurya in the early days of IPL. I think they smashed Ishant Sharma out of the attack, if I remember right. I vaguely remember this as a spectacular partnership. Recently, I went back and checked. I mean, it's okay. It was entertaining to watch, but not a significant T20 landmark or something, right? So I'm just saying that it suited the administrators that all these batsmen batting brought a lot of credibility to the format, brought a lot of initial sort of switch from the traditional followers of the game to this, and they're probably getting enough runway right now for them to ignore Kohli and Rohit Sharma and all those guys and move on and move into hitting in the future. But there's no doubt that the game and the riches or the boards benefited from batsmen moving over and batting in this format, even though it is suboptimal for the format that it was meant to be.
And back in 2008 and 9 also, it was a way in which to bring the dream teams into reality, right? I mean, you're basically thinking of Sachin and Jayasurya in one team in your dream team, but you actually see it happen in a T20. So more than the actual game itself, people were looking at this as, oh, these two greats are opening together and let's see what they do. And then even if they scored at 100 strike rate, people were like, wow, this is just so stunning to watch and all. Anyway, so yeah, this is all for the it's a sort of good background and good history and all that. So, Kartikeya, anything to comment on this? These two, what we have all been saying?
Well, I mean, the whole point of T20 was that it was designed to look like cricket. That was why that was the whole marketing spiel behind it. The premise was that people wanted a shrunken form of cricket, which would fit in one evening. So none of the laws were changed. It was not that the over quotas were not even changed. In ODIs you had 10 overs each and 50 overs in all. In T20 you have 4 overs each and 20 overs in all. You have a slightly longer power play, but even that, I mean, you had 15 overs of power play out of 50 overs in ODIs, and you have 6 out of 20. So that's pretty close. Everything was designed so that you have 10 wickets in both. Everything was designed so that it was basically cricket as people would recognize it. And that was one of the things which is not the case with a double wicket tournament or with this max cricket. The Martin Pro design.
Yeah, game. Which is basically now become like that 60, I think, that they're playing in West Indies now, similar to max cricket. Yeah.
Yeah. So the whole point of T20 was that it should not look unfamiliar to the public. And it was wildly successful. I mean, it is commercially it is a very clever design. It led to a lot of this, spurious sort of commentary, where people are saying, "Oh well, you get to see Jacques Kallis against Anil Kumble, and the whole thing lasts 3 balls." That's not really Jacques Kallis versus Anil Kumble. I mean, that's something completely different. But it took a long time for people to sort of be able to describe what it was that was going on. The other thing I wanted to say was that the 137 with Raina is sort of half the story. The other half of the story is that he gets out every 23 balls, which is much better than getting out every 30 balls. Because it means that he gets to that 137 strike rate much quicker than a guy who lasts 30 balls per dismissal. So that is where the efficiency comes in. I mean, the whole point of T20 is that if in T20 is scoring at 135 and averaging 50 is worse than scoring at 135 and averaging 25. Because you're scoring quicker earlier in your innings in the second case than in the first case. So you're wasting fewer deliveries. And this is the second part of the whole sort of control versus efficiency thing. You see, once you start thinking in terms of efficiency, then you have to start thinking in terms of, well, is the batter doing something that the bowling side is not conceding? When the bowling side is putting 5 fielders on the boundary for as much as they can, and when they are defending every single boundary that they are allowed to under the fielding restrictions for all 120 balls, basically, then the question becomes, well, what is the bowling side prepared to concede? And the bowling side is essentially prepared to concede a single every ball. So the question becomes, well, what is the batter doing that goes beyond that? So, and this is not the case in one-day cricket. Now, in one-day cricket, scoring rates are at about a 1 a ball or just below. So, this bowling sides are not always conceding a single every ball. That's partly forced on them because now they have to have 5 fielders inside the circle for 40 overs. But partly also that scoring rates are not that high, right? So, this is why a single in a T20 game and a single in an ODI game are not the same thing. There's no bowler in T20 who is not happy when he goes for only 1 and 1 ball. Whereas a bowler, Anil Kumble, went for 6 singles in an ODI over, he would be really mad about it. Because he doesn't want, that's not a good result for him. Whereas in a T20 game, that's a brilliant result for him. He's won that over. He's basically won every single ball in that over. So if a batter is just pushing singles, then he's basically accepting what the bowling side is offering, and he's conceding that delivery to the opposition, essentially. And so that's why the whole 50 average is not such a big deal, because it's relatively easy to average 50 if you play slow enough, because nobody's trying to get you out.
In your assertion, the only thing that I can think of arguing about is that you are essentially saying it's better if a batsman who's 18 of 12 balls gets out before he goes on to make 36 of 24. Essentially, the same strike rate. But, once he arrives at 150 and he stays at 150, that's suboptimal is what you're saying.
Well, if you accept the premise that a batter who's in longer is set more or whatever, right? Let's say that's true, right? If that's true, then the batter should keep trying to score quicker and quicker. And of course, there's a ceiling to that. The curve sort of flattens out beyond a point, right? And I think from all the data we know, it flattens out somewhere around 2 runs per ball. Beyond that, players are not able to score much quicker than that, realistically. So yeah, I think the players should try to keep pursuing like 2 runs per ball. Now, there are other things that come into it, like matchups and whatnot, and there may be sort of compulsions within the game where, there is a value in a player, seeing off a slow left-arm orthodox bowlers over right-hander, seeing off that because, there are 6 overs of medium-fast bowling to come and the batter is really good against medium-fast bowling. Then, yeah, okay. Then take singles from the slow left-arm orthodox and wait for those overs. That's fine, but that's not what these guys are doing. No, these guys are basically playing T20 like it's an ODI for a long time. In the middle overs they push singles, then they wait for the 13th or 14th over before they start attacking. That's just you're giving up. See, every time you push a single in a T20 game, you've basically conceded 5% of the innings. Roughly, whatever, 1 out of 120. This is somewhere less than 5, just less than 5, right? Or whatever. A large part of the innings, let's say.
No, but see, that's the point. So now arguing from, let's say, an 18 of 12 balls and 36 of 24, just sticking to that example, if that guy gets out earlier because he's not able to, accelerate more, wouldn't that be an unfair expectation that the next guy would do that? Like the conditions and the bowling also dictate how fast the batters hit, right? It's not, and also the risks that the batters take. It's not a guarantee. It's always a 50-50 that it might come or come off or not. So there is no way to determine while the guy is going on in that strike rate that, it is slow or faster. You can only say that it is slow or faster after the event, not during the event, right? Because you don't know what is the baseline for that condition and the amount of risks these guys take.
Yeah, but come on, conditions don't vary that much in T20, man. I mean, that how many T20 games do you see where the score is less than a run a ball? It's always, the score in T20 is always, if the batsman slog and it comes off, they make 200, and if they slog and it doesn't come off, they make 150. That's 95% of all T20 games. You cannot sort of say that the logic of the format is shaped by the outliers of the format. No, that's not what the logic of the format does, right? That's like saying why pick 5 bowlers in a test match, right? If you don't really know whether the pitch is going to help 4 fast bowlers or 3 spinners. You don't know how the pitch is going to play. So why not always hedge your bets and play only for 3 bowlers, 4 bowlers, whatever. You can't really think.
But you're still see, okay, fine. If you say other things remain equal, you're still saying that this guy is suboptimal and him losing a wicket would be beneficial post a certain amount of time because the next guy will come and probably hit it faster.
No, I'm not saying that. No, I'm not saying that. I'm saying he should keep trying to score quicker and quicker. That he should keep trying to hit the ball to the boundary, basically. There's no percentage in not trying to do that. Because when the next guy comes in, the bowling side is still going to defend boundaries against the next guy. It's not like they're going to put 3 slips on a gully to the next guy, no?
Yeah, but the point about the scoring, Kartikeya, is that when you're trying to put up a score of 150 in 20 overs, or let's say 180 in 20 overs and 220 in 20 overs, it's a 40-run gap, but the approach is still vastly different, right? Like the way you would go about, you may not go about hitting every ball in that when you're trying 170 to 180 range, but 220 you would probably, because you have to go at close to 2 runs whatever. You have to go at around 2 runs a ball. You would want to do that, right? The approach, the hitting v batting approach changes in that frame.
Yeah, sure. Teams can decide that, but so what? That's still settling. That's still saying, okay, we'll make 170.
But then they're winning the match. No, that's what I'm saying.
Are they winning the match? I don't know. It's not clear that they are going to win the match.
When the entire ecosystem operates like this, right? It's not like there's one team. Okay, there are some exceptions, but on an average, every team has a share of batsmen. And when you're competing, let's say if there's a KL Rahul on one side and Rohit Sharma on one side and Virat Kohli on another side or whatever, you'd like to believe that there's, you play for 170 and they're designed to play for 170, and then you kind of back yourself to win.
I don't think they ever say at the start of the innings, okay, we are going to go for 170. I think they play it by ear. I think if they start off and they get to 70 for 1 in the power play, then they're going to try and push for whatever they can get. I don't really think there's any evidence to suggest that any of these teams are saying, okay, today we're going to settle for 170 or tomorrow we need 200 or anything.
Sure. But even if they decide in the 10th over, right? Even if they assess the conditions and decide in the 10th or 12th over, obviously they would want more than 170. It's every team wants as much as they can get. But I'm saying if they if they say, okay, we minimum need 170, they're not going to hit every ball.
Yeah, but if they're going to leave, that just means that they've decided that they can't really hit the percentages of hitting are lower. That doesn't mean
exactly.
That doesn't mean that they're conceding deliveries. No, that just means that they don't think they can hit. That's different from saying, well, let's just keep wickets in hand for the last 6 overs. That's not what they're doing over there. In any case, the evidence suggests that in a chase, 1 wicket in the 10th over, 1 extra wicket in the 10th over is worth about 8 to 9 runs. So if you're chasing a total and you're 70 for no loss, then you're better off being 85 for 2 is basically
compared to 70 for no loss. Yeah,
but you're not better off being 75 for 2.
Got it. So that extra 15 runs and it makes up for those wickets.
Yeah. That's part of.
But that goes against what you're saying just now, right? you're 70 for no loss and 10 overs, you're better off trying to score much and then being 85 for 2 rather than 70 for no loss, right?
No,
Maybe
but
that's what
the
he's
point.
saying.
No.
No, he said
Sorry,
it's worse off. 70 for no loss is better than being
He's
85.
equal. He's equal.
He said it's
They're-
equal.
Oh, okay. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
He said 75 for 2 is worse, 85 for 2 is equal.
Yeah.
That's what the figures suggest right now. The expected win percentage of both chasing about 175 or 180 is equal. After I think the 9th over or whatever, I looked it up at some point.
Okay, I have two fundamental questions to ask, and this is not just to Karthikeya, to all of us here. That whatever he's talking about to me seems fairly straightforward from the design of the format. Now, why is it that what he says is so controversial? Because people hound him on Twitter for everything that he says. I don't understand. Perhaps Ashoka, as a keen watcher of IPL, you can.
No, first of all, maybe what he's saying is rational or not is another point. But he is saying it. You understand? I emphasize on he. Is saying it is different, but whoever is saying it matters, right? Like
no, and the crucial thing is one of the points that is sort of substantiating his assertion is that Kohli is a bad T20 player. So automatically that people cannot accept that, right? I mean, that is the issue, which I think we should talk about a bit because, okay, Mahesh, what is your second fundamental question? Then we can talk.
I really wanted to highlight this point. When you're talking about Kohli and Babar Azam, which he's talked about quite a lot, is that in fact he gives them credit. One he's saying they're not even good T20 batsmen, which is fine. But he's giving them credit by saying because they're batsmen, they just can't let themselves go and hit. Right?
How is that credit? How is that credit for an RCB fan who's waiting like 15 years for his team to lift the trophy, for Kohli to lift the trophy? You are coming along and saying, no, he's not fit for this format. That guy will want to bury you, no?
No, it's very problematic. If you're primarily an RCB fan, you shouldn't really be defending Kohli. You should be joining KD and saying, let's sack Kohli, right? If that's your primary identity. But here, I think most of people's primary identity is I'm a cricket fan, I'm a Kohli fan, Kohli's fan as a batsman, and then an RCB fan. So that's the hierarchy that I see.
You have gone to sleep at 2005 and you're just waking up right now. You go back talking about Vishwanath and whatnot you're talking about.
No.
Don't even come and say.
I'll come to that.
That you pretend to understand what a current cricket fan is.
I was reading one of KD's pieces before coming here. And in fact, I just absolutely love the choice of words that he used in that. He talks about England's approach to T20 and before that West Indies approach to T20. And he calls it orthodox. He says that is orthodox T20. Right? When a batsman is attempting to go at 180 strike, right? That is actually orthodox T20. That is what you're supposed to do. So this whole idea of what is orthodox is defined by what you're supposed to do for that format, right? What these people are doing are the ones which is kind of against the grain, right? It is not orthodox. So we are just mixing things up.
First of all, to answer your question one, neither you nor Karthikeya have ever bled red in your life. Not the blood, the RCB bleeding red. You have never done it in your life, so you'll not understand. Second of all, who gives you the right to come and talk about Kohli? Do you know that guy has 50 in every format, average? Do you know that it's been 1,000 days that people have been crying and offering pujas in temple for him to hit centuries? You don't know any of that shit. You just come and say this is.
That is the partisan argument, which, okay, that will be there in every sport, every format. But seems to be actually like a counter argument with the fact that, packing a team with 7 or 8 hitters is actually, leads to is actually not as good as having 1 or 2 anchors in there. Like there is this anchor concept, right? Like, especially if you're chasing, people will say you need an anchor to actually be there so that everybody else can hit around them. Otherwise, they will just collapse in a heap and the team will get out for less than 100 in every match and all that. So that seems to be the so-called counter to this argument. So what is the answer to that?
At least for Pakistan, at least they have acknowledged that they are going with this method. Whether the method is right or wrong is up for debate. And since the guy they have identified to be the anchor is Babar Azam, and since Babar Azam has like fanatical fan base, so when we say that he's actually slowing down, he's a bit slow for T20. He might not be a suitable candidate for a T20 hitter. It makes people's blood boil. That is true, but
I think it's also like Pakistan play a bulk of their games in UAE, right? And there are conditions in UAE where you need this kind of like that World Cup we saw. Like Rizwan also turned out to be an anchor in games. Babar turned out to be an anchor. So it worked for them, but that doesn't mean it will necessarily work everywhere, right? I mean, if they play games in say Australia, who knows if that same situation is going to work for them.
Babar to an extent, I'm not trying to be a Kohli fan or whatnot, but Babar has a sub 130 strike rate across in his T20 career. At least Kohli is like 132, 135, something like that. So that is comparable to an Ian Morgan or a Martin Guptill, who, if they turn up for a T20, you would not say they're out of place, right? So
that is where his point is extremely valid, that even though you're of the same strike rate, but if your average is higher, you're worse than the other two.
Correct. I don't disagree, but I'm saying like in preliminary analysis only, Babar is out.
No, but the point is that to say that Kohli or Babar or Smith or any of these really, really top batsmen are average T20 players is a point about T20. It is not a point about them. But it's hard to make that point to someone who thinks in terms of the glory of Kohli or Smith or whoever. So that's just a Twitter noise. That's not really significant. In the sense, look, Gordon Greenidge and Desmond Haynes were very, very successful one-day openers in their era, but they were also wildly inefficient one-day openers. They scored extremely slowly, and the next generation of one-day openers demonstrated that they scored extremely slowly. Gordon Greenidge has scored they both scored at about somewhere between 60 and 65 runs per 100 balls. And that's why Kohli is basically in international T20. Kohli, I think, is basically what Desmond Haynes or Gordon Greenidge were. He's not what Viv Richards was in ODI cricket. He's not in T20. He's not. There isn't like a T20 equivalent of ODI of Viv Richards in T20 internationals yet. There isn't a player who's that far ahead of his time.
AB de Villiers, no.
AB de Villiers comes close, but his great achievements are all in IPL and League T20. He hasn't really played that much for South Africa.
I mean, international T20. First of all, the samples will be pretty small, right? I mean, I don't know how much
they don't really play that much. But he's only got 1,600 international T20 runs. He's a good record. He averages 26 and he gets out once every 19 balls. So, but yeah, he's not Viv Richards had an amazing ODI record. Viv Richards' ODI record is phenomenal even today.
Yeah, Viv Richards basically went at a strike rate of that Kohli goes at and averaged pretty much what Rohit Sharma averages. So, that is quite stunning for a guy who played in the 70s and 80s. So,
he was so far ahead of his contemporaries.
Yeah, but the question about coming back to the batters and the composition of the side, is it optimal? Is it more than optimal? Is it a successful strategy before like a tournament or a game to go with like 7-8 batters and to not have that Kohli, Babar, Smith, that batsman in the middle at all, irrespective of where you're playing? Or is a lot of it condition based? Or you say, okay, this is the game and this is how we go?
Well, look, what is the anchor going to do? The anchor is going to see off 2 overs, 3 overs at the most. He's going to push singles. Anybody can do that against this field. That's not really. You don't really need Kohli to do that for you. Surya Kumar Yadav could do that, or I don't know. Pick your, Paul Valthati could probably do that. I don't know. That's not. I don't know. I
That's a
just picked
blast
I don't
from the
know
past.
how Paul 13 record is. I just know because our friend Subhash thinks, he played one of the flukiest innings in the history of innings in one of the IPL games at one point.
One of the great innings ever in IPL history. Yeah.
He once spent half an hour explaining to me about this innings. That's why that name is in my head. But see, look, if you want an anchor, then play the anchor at 6. No, why play the anchor at the top of the order? You go start hitting. If it doesn't work, then find some guy to see off a few overs at 6. You need an anchor if you're 30 for 3, not if you're not at the beginning. Why anticipate that you're going to flop?
Yeah, and I will link that piece that you wrote about the essential point of T20, where you had that very interesting table where you had Kohli, Rohit, AB, Gale, Babar, and Butler, and you basically did that average. What do you call it? The percentage of the average score. So, and you basically showed that how the innings progresses. And someone like AB de Villiers is basically in the positive. He's in the, he's scoring quickly throughout his innings. But someone like Kohli and Babar, for the majority of the innings, they are in the red. And it's only Kohli after ball 37 or something is when he gets into the blues. Now the question is whether it.
The point is that he doesn't survive up to ball 37 in the overwhelming majority of his innings. You see, he gets out before he gets to ball 37 in the overwhelming majority. That's the reason why it's such a problem. No, I mean it's the idea that he's digging a hole for himself, and then once in about 4 or 5 innings he gets out of the hole. But in the other 3 or 4 times he doesn't get out of the hole. No, he gets out in the hole.
Correct. Yeah, that's the point that you make in the piece. But at the same time, Josh Butler is like the reverse. Like he's in the blue till ball 41, and then he gets into the red till ball 47.
That's not really serious because there are very, very few innings that he survives beyond 41 balls. So
okay.
Yeah, it's a very small percentage of his innings. No.
Okay. Yeah. And Gale is interesting because I always thought Gale will be more like Kohli in this regard, where he takes some 20-30 balls to thing. But actually, Gale, after ball 13, he's all in the positive. So he pretty much takes those 13 balls and then he's gone. He's on his way.
Gale is absolutely like built in the lab to be a T20 player. He's the closest thing to the Viv Richards of T20. Because he basically doesn't take the quick single at all. He just stays on strike, and if he stays on strike for 3 or 4 balls, he's going to hit a couple of boundaries. One of those boundaries is going to be a 6 because he's that tall. So, I mean, Gale is going to play 4 or 5 balls in an over and hit 2 boundaries. One of which will be a 6. So that's a vastly more efficient way of playing T20 than pushing singles all the time.
Yeah, actually, somebody asked Gale once about the fact that he rarely takes singles, and if he doesn't like to run and all. He said, no, it's not liking to run. But he said this whole concept of getting set, right? Like people think getting set means taking a single and going to the other end. But for him, getting set is just being defending the ball or leaving the ball and being at the same end. So that after 3 balls, he can hit the ball for 6. So that is getting set for him. And that is an interesting way to look at it because traditionally, you say getting set means, the Gavaskar method of get your blood circulation going, go to the other end and come back. That is all like a totally different idea of getting set.
Oh, by the time you do that, no?
Yeah, the game is done.
But that's what Liam Livingstone is also like that. No, I mean, he's basically he doesn't have any of this getting set business. He picks his spots and he scores boundaries. That is one other thing in T20. I mean, it's not just that Mahesh was talking about. Batsmen might feel liberated. I mean, okay, up to a point, but it's not a question of liberation. No, it's a question of deliberately trying to score boundaries. That doesn't just mean hit the ball hard. That means hit the ball to a part of the field where there isn't a fielder on the boundary. That's why they're all cultivating these scoops and reverse sweeps and whatever lap shots, and they're able to hit from the fifth stump outside off stump over mid wicket, and they're able to back away to leg and open the face of the bat and hit over third man from outside leg stump and all that. That's all cultivated. No, they're trying to learn, or the whole trying to hit the short ball straight over mid on, by staying beside the line of the ball. Those are all like, that's not liberation. No, that's just hitting. That's a different art. It's a different way of thinking about what the bowler is doing.
Yeah, and also it's a different art, and it's also a different sort of mindset, right? Like, see, the big problem here is that T20 doesn't have its own like sort of ground up infrastructure and system yet. I mean, they're still, where are the teams picking from? They're picking from under 19s and under 17 state sides, right? And those players are coming up batting. They're not coming up hitting because they are playing their typical, the junior age group level games and all that. And for them to actually make it to the senior side, like if an under 17 player has to make it to the under 19 team, he has to actually score a lot of runs, which means he has to bat. So it's not like that's how he's getting recognized. But then he's coming into a T20 setup where he has to hit, and where getting out is part of the system, where he has to take it into his head that if he getting out is actually good at times and not necessarily bad. So that is the whole shift that is coming. I mean, it's not, had T20 had its own kind of ecosystem, then the format would have gone places that it's not even gone now. I mean, it would have just gone so far ahead that we would be not even talking about all this. We would be talking about something totally entirely different.
Yeah, and if you start thinking in terms of like picking spots and things like that, then the whole idea of bowling also changes, no? Because see, suppose you have a field set where you have all the fielders on the boundary on the leg side and none of the fielders on the boundary on the offside, or one on the offside and four on the leg side, right? That already tells you where the boundary is available, and therefore it tells you what lines and lengths the bowler is likely to bowl. So now suddenly nobody is defending the top of off stump. Nobody is trying to beat the vertical edge of the bat, the edge of the vertical bat, or anything like that anymore. What they're trying to do is they're trying to defeat the batsman's ambition of trying to hit a boundary. That's why the whole the full wide ball bowled very close to the wide spot. That's a very good ball in T20, and it's very hard to bowl that accurately. That still requires control. But it's still, I mean, the sort of the amount of risk the batters are taking, or the amount of the sort of the single-mindedness that these batters attempt to hit a boundary is so much that it is not unusual for a bowler to go for like 45 in 4 overs on one day and get 3 for 15 on the next day. And it's not that the bowlers bowled better on the second day compared to the first. It's just that the chances have not come off on the second day, while the chances did come off for the batter on the first. So it's it's a highly noisy game in that sense. But it is very much a contest, and I think the whole point of this conversation is to pinpoint what that contest is. So that you can sort of begin to see it for what it is, rather than trying to sort of impose some sort of logic of cricket on it.
You're saying that unlike in a test match where the bowler is basically initiating the action and his length and his what he is bowling is dictating what is coming, in T20 you're saying the contest is looking at it from the batsman's perspective and the chances he's taking, right? Rather than what the bowler is initiating.
No, correct. Also, the bowler's leverage is reduced because the batter doesn't care about getting dismissed as much, right? The bowler has leverage in Test cricket because batters care about getting dismissed. Like, batters don't want to get dismissed, right? So that is why bowlers are able to, if the bowler bowls a good ball, then the batter has to respect it and has to hope that he survives it. Whereas in T20, that's not the case. No, batter doesn't care about getting out. Jasprit Bumrah may bowl the absolute perfect Yorker, but if by the time he bowls it, the batsman is like 2 steps down the pitch and out, 3 stumps outside off stump and trying to play a scoop, then what Yorker, man?
But that could happen in tests too, right? But you're saying the mindset will not allow the batsman to do that, is it? What is the issue?
No, the issue is that in Test cricket, the value of a wicket is far too high. No, if you do that for a Jasprit Bumrah Yorker and you lose the wicket, that is far more impactful than in a T20 because you have far more resources for far less of a time than in a test.
Got it. So your chances of doing that in a test are far lower. I mean, unless the situation absolutely demands it, it's far lower than it would be in like a T20 game. Got
it. Katie, why don't you finish off the point and define it as a contest? What is that? You still admit there is a contest there. So what is that contest?
Of course, there's a contest there. It's that batsmen are trying to score boundaries and bowlers are trying to stop them. That's the contest.
And
right, like so, if for instance, let's assume that T20 evolves into a place where the majority of teams are packed with just hitters, and these are people who grow up just hitting, right? From their day one of practice, they just grow up hitting. When it gets to that point, is it realistically possible for us to say there will be some specialist T20 bowlers that exist, or it's as good as a feeder machine? I mean, right now they do exist. That's because there's still a fairly good, inefficient pocket of non-hitters out there that you can prevent them from hitting boundaries relatively easier as against good hitters. So what would be the role of bowlers in that sort of hyper-efficient future?
I don't really know. I mean, that's a sort of coaching question. I mean, it's an open question. I think whether, T20 batters need to be cultivated from sort of the age of 12 or whatever it is, or whether batsmen can learn, batting and then just pick up test cricket, pick up normal batting and then, cultivate hitting later on. A lot of players have done that, I mean, Livingston and company have done that in a sense. So I don't really know whether it is really a big deal, a question of that. I mean, I think that's sort of there's an element of a turf war in that discussion, no?
Do you at least concede that there are specialist T20 bowlers who have an edge over other bowlers because they are more adept at stopping boundaries, or they have more options to stop batsmen and hitters from scoring boundaries?
I don't know. I mean, there aren't that many players who are playing both formats, so we don't really know, no? I mean, I think
you have Rashid Khan as an example, as a prototype example.
Rashid Khan sort of reminds me of Saqlain Mushtaq a lot, in one-day cricket in the 90s. For a while, Saqlain Mushtaq was basically unplayable in one-day cricket in the 90s. And that was because, nobody was reading which way he was turning it. And this was a real problem. And he was getting bucket loads of wickets, and he was like, Ajanta Mendes was that way for like 6 months. And, Saqlain Mushtaq was like that for like 4 years.
And Saqlain Mushtaq used to often bowl in the last over, like the death overs. Yeah. So hitting him was almost impossible for a while because, you can probably play him out if you need to. But if you have to hit him, then people used to invariably get out. Yeah.
No, I mean, the response to efficiency, increase in efficiency in batting is the move away from traditional bowling metrics of, getting wickets and whatnot. Wickets might be a consequence of not giving away boundaries rather than, some planned event of taking.
So what is that metric that says he stopped the most number of boundaries? Like, how do you? It's
The
not
number of
economy,
dot
right?
balls.
Surely.
The number of dot balls is one. Your runs per over is another. Which are fairly straightforward indicators that you accumulated a lot of non-boundary balls and also prevented the batting team from so taking too many risks, or if they took risks, they were all unsuccessful. To that extent, I feel that Ashwin is also a great T20 bowler. If you see his record, it's not that stellar and whatnot. But I think not as stellar as Rashid Khan, but he's a phenomenal T20 bowler. Bhuvneshwar Kumar is another that comes to mind. Bumrah, obviously. So there are people who have changed their way of attack in response to the batting mode, where the prize is on scoring as many boundaries as possible. So then your bowling and the way you bowl is a response to that. And also there is this new thing called matchups, where you choose particular bowlers in a particular set of conditions for a particular set of batsmen. So that is a further hyper specialization over and above whatever we have talked about. So then you have bowlers only for certain amount of batsmen where you bring them on. Like DK now comes to bat only after the 15th over. So in response to that, there may be teams who are trying to bowl spinners to him in the death overs. We don't know, but that may happen. So I think it's the reverse of Test cricket, where the bowling responds to whatever the batter's intent is.
Well, perhaps, but that is still it's still a question of if a bowler is a specialist against, say, lefties or something like that, that's still a more limited bowler than someone who can bowl at both lefties and righties. No, so that's still a lesser bowler in a sense, because that bowler is effective in a smaller subset of all possible conditions that may arise.
Right, but matchups is a very, very specific case, right? Like this batsman traditionally is not that great against, let's say, left arm spinner. So whenever this batsman comes in, or if this batsman is in the 11, make sure to have one left arm option. So that's kind of what specialization, the specificity of that contest is, and that's what matchups mean, right? These days.
Yeah, but that's still a you'd still rather have four bowlers who are good against all types of batters. No, I mean the matchups arise because there aren't that many good bowlers. If that's not the matchups don't arise because the specialists are specializing in to such a level that they can't do other things. It's because they're not really that good at other things.
Yeah, it's okay to draw the analogy. It's not like the left arm pitcher in baseball who will come and, towards the 8th or 9th inning specifically meant to do that. It's not that same thing, right? It's like basically people who are better at bowling against left-handed batters than right-handed batters. So, okay, let's use them now, like that.
The point is that bowlers in T20 haven't got that many options. Because you see, the number of fielders are the same, the number of the way runs are counted are the same, the size of the ground is the same, right? If you imagine a situation in which there was like a gun T20 bowler who was finding a way to go for 3 and over as a rule in T20 cricket, that bowler would play Test cricket. Because that bowler would be doing something extraordinary, because that bowler would be finding efficiencies where there aren't any efficiencies, where other people are not able to find those efficiencies. So the range of runs that a bowler concedes in T20 is anywhere between 6 and over and 12 and over. That's a wildly huge range, and that suggests that basically bowlers haven't got much of a choice in T20. They've got a very, very narrow window of narrow sliver of options in which they can bowl and hope that the batter doesn't score a boundary. And all the sort of classic ways in which bowlers do that now. They bowl the wide full ball, or they bowl the slow bouncer, or they bowl the quick bouncer with the field back, or they bowl the what's it called, the back of a length. They hit the pitch and try to hit the batsman basically in the midriff, and hope that the batsman is not sitting back and waiting to slog him over mid wicket. It's a game of guessing. There are basically 2 or 3 lengths that the batsman is expecting, like 2 or 3 line or length combinations that the batsman is expecting, given what the field is, and you hope that you bowl the one which is the batsman is not expecting the most, and you hope the batsman doesn't adjust clean enough to still hit you to the boundary. It's not like there aren't. It isn't like there is in Test cricket there is there are different ways in which you can become like really lethal. You can be metronomic, you can be like extremely aggressive and attacking all the time if you have enough pace. But in T20 cricket, it's not. I mean, it's not a question of what is a specialist T20 bowler. I think the question is like the scope is very, very narrow in T20 for bowlers. Firstly, they're only bowling 4 overs.
Also, I think the question is, as you have mentioned quite often, is what is a good T20 ball, right? I think it's the only way to define a good T20 ball, as you've said, is with the result. It's not with the action, it's with the reaction, right?
Yeah, but you see, that's where sort of the whole, bowling to your field thing comes in, and bowling to your field doesn't mean what it means in Test cricket. Bowling to your field means bowling where it's hardest for the batsman to send you to the boundary. And I think there is some evidence to show that if you do that consistently enough, then you go to the boundary less often than other or in T20 cricket, unlike in baseball, the batter can still get 4 even if the ball doesn't go where the batter wants to hit it. No, but this is why it is so terrible to push singles, because that is the one guaranteed way in which the bowler, can get away with going for 25, 28 in 4 overs. They should really, Cricinfo measures control. I think Cricinfo should have another, and it's a beautiful binary metric, really elegant. And I think we've talked about it before. I've definitely talked about it on the other podcast. But they should have another sort of metric analogous to control, which is called attempted boundaries. And this is basically the question that the metric should answer is that given the field setting and given where the ball was bowled, did the batsman attempt to score a boundary or not? And the answer to that is either yes or no. And you keep tallying that for each ball. And I think that will tell you a lot about T20, a lot more about T20 than a lot of these very heavy duty metrics that they have, where they're basically enumerating, well, he played a cover drive, he played an on drive, he played this, he played that. It doesn't matter. You see, it doesn't matter whether it's a cover drive or not. If it's a cover drive and there are 2 sweeper covers, then he's not attempting to score a boundary.
So basically, they can just tweak that control measure and say that if he's in control and beats the field, right, or is trying to score at a place where there is no fielder, that is pretty much in control in T20, right?
No. Control is where if the ball goes where the batsman intends. Control is fine. Control works in its present form. Control works for T20 as well as, but control in the sense, if a batsman is pushing a single, the batsman is in control, right? But he's only pushing a single. But what I want to know is, firstly, is the batsman in control or not? Secondly, what is the batsman attempting? Is the batsman attempting to score a boundary or not? And that's a yes or no question, right? So I want to know whether, in the first 10 balls, how many times does Kohli attempt to score a boundary? And it makes a difference in the long run, whether it's 3 balls or whether it's 6 balls.
Yeah, that's true. So which brings me to this formula that you were talking about in terms of, how, like, the one way to measure a good T20 player, like a batter, hitter, or a batter, whatever. So this formula that you have is what? First unit is boundary runs scored divided by balls faced. And you multiply that with the second unit, which is boundary runs scored divided by boundary runs scored per dismissal, per the number of times you've been dismissed. Okay. And in that, you have this list where Chris Gale and Andre Russell, Evan Lewis, Alex Hales, I mean, these are all like the top people in this list. And I don't even see Virat Kohli or Babar, Azam or Smith or anyone in this list anywhere in the top 20. So I see Sehwag actually, which is interesting. He's there. Quinton de Kock, Surya Kumar Yadav, Brendan McCullum. Yeah. So yeah,
correct.
I don't see this measure on TV at all. And I think this is far more elegant than say strike rate, because at least it's telling you the boundary runs scored by a player in that given time that he has been there in the middle. Yeah.
I mean, actually, it's sort of the boundary runs per balls faced is the sort of the purest measure.
Yeah, I mean, definitely, and I think that should be much more widely used. By
boundary runs scored per balls faced is one thing. Why do you want to multiply it with boundary runs scored with dismissal divided by dismissal?
Because I want to see, the dismissal is a consequence of attempting boundaries, no? So I want to see how often the attempted boundary is successful. See, the first measure is measuring how frequently boundaries are attempted, right? And the second measure is measuring. It's not really elegant. It's a little clumsy. That's why I tend to prefer just the first part of it. But the second part of it is useful, I think.
Okay. So the higher the number, the better the T20 batsman, is it?
Yeah.
From what I guess.
Correct.
Okay.
See, there are basically among the players who have among players who have scored at least 4,000 T20 runs, there are only a few who boundary runs per balls faced is more than one, which is basically they're scoring more than a run ball just from boundaries. Okay.
No, that doesn't make sense. If you score a boundary, you're already scoring more than run a ball, right? Anyways.
It means that you're scoring. It means if your boundary runs per ball space is greater than one, it means you're scoring better than a run a ball just from boundaries.
Oh, okay. In your innings, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. So you are not in need of singles, is what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah, but so among players with at least 4,000 T20 runs, this is like T20 and T20 internationals combined. Among the players who have made at least 4,000 runs in these two formats, there are only 8 who have this record. Russell, Gale, Lewis, Evan Lewis, Luke Ronchi, Virender Sehwag, Paul Sterling, Alex Hales, and Richard Levi. And there are a few who are close. There are Nicholas Purant, Thisara Pereira, Chris Lynn, Afridi, Livingston, Maxwell, Roy, Surya Kumar Yadav, Rishabh Pant. These are all players who are pretty close by. I mean, they're very, very. They're among the more efficient boundary hitters going in T20. But they're not going to make anybody's list of apart from Gale and maybe Russell, they're not going to make anybody's list of great T20 players, no?
Okay, the two of you. Siddhi had to leave for some work. So we're going to finish it with just the two of them picking, let's say, the top 3 T20 hitters that they'll pick in their team. Ashoka, you first.
Top 3, yeah.
All time.
Fairly easy. So it's Gale, it is Russell, and I would pick Shardul. Why not?
No, only mortals. No.
Okay, mortals. So Gale, Russell, and probably I would pick Sehwag.
leaving aside the ones that Ashoka already picked, I'd say Maxwell, Livingston, and Puran.
There you go. Yours, Mahesh. Since you watch so little T20, you should say Babar, Azam, Kohli, and Rohit Sharma.
Oh, of course, Rohit Sharma.
Because we went an entire podcast with you and we didn't take the name even in joke. So we should finish with that kind of name.
No, I mean, I did watch quite a bit of T20 in the early days, and I still watch the highlights at least. So I know Andre Russell is in a category of his own. I do know that Chris Gayle was the pioneer in T20. So I'm going to pick the two of them. The third one, I'll probably go with Rishabh Pant.
Not a bad pick, but yeah. But all of us missed AB de Villiers, so that should be a nice,
I would have picked AB de Villiers, but I'm really picking from data because I haven't really seen enough of him in T20s.
Yeah, but the point is, I mean, it's an interesting question. See, because the point is, there aren't like three players who are going to be better than any other three players. See, there's going to be a lot of combinations of three players who are going to be roughly equally good. Because three is a very small number of players.
Maybe next time when we do this, we should do a T20 11.
No, we could have done 11. I just asked 3 because I wanted to kind of see if the 3 are consistent choices. So, Kerry, to extend on your point, let's say let's take IPL as an example. If IPL were to become more efficient than what it is right now, which is, there's a lot more hitting than batting that we see even now once in a while. No, but do you think we have enough baseline of hitters for 10 teams to be filled with as many hitters as they need in the 11?
Well, if it does become more efficient, then it will mean that there are, no? I mean, I think it won't become more efficient until there are.
The odds of a batter being a hitter is much more than the other way around. But is it that simple for us to conclude or to even think that a great batter should necessarily, or what is it necessarily, but can perhaps easily get into hitting if he chooses to?
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a question of cultivating shots. No, I mean, it's a question of cultivating attacking shots. I mean, Cheteshwar Pujara is scoring 117, 120 balls in a one-day match in England. Clearly he can play shots when he wants to, but the percentages are not in his favor, and so he's not convinced that he can play those shots. Right? But when he's convinced, he does. I don't think it's an existential thing. It's just you do one or the other, and it's a question of whether you agree to do the other.
Okay, I think we've discussed a fair bit on this, and we've covered quite a bit of ground on this. We've talked about these in sort of bits and pieces in the past podcast, and of course, Katie talks about it all the time on Twitter. But it was pretty good to get him in one place and kind of get him to talk about his theories and clarify some of the things that you can't quite sort of get the full picture when he's tweeting, or sometimes even when he's writing a piece. There are some questions that we can't quite ask in the middle of a piece. So I'm glad we had that opportunity to do that. Thanks, Katie, for spending your time with us and elaborating your theories. As always, it was great fun talking with you. Thanks, Ashoka, for joining. As Siddhi mentioned at the beginning of the podcast, please do read Cricket Beyond the Bazaar, which is our second publication as part of the Area All Out publishing venture. We also published War Minus the Shooting earlier, and we have quite a few books coming up in the pipeline, which will keep you posted as things come to fruition. Thanks a lot for listening to the podcast, and thanks a lot for supporting the book venture as well. Thank you.
Cheers.
Bye. Bye-bye.
The test match. India have won the series. They're going to get back for 2. India home. Lords goes wild.